The first person to recognize Dante Moretti was not the Omega who had left him 5 years ago. It was his son. Rain tapped softly against the front windows of the honey oven, turning the quiet street of Havenbrook into a blur of silver pavement, yellow porch lights, and umbrellas moving like little shadows beneath the evening sky. Noah Bennett had just pulled a tray of cinnamon rolls from the oven when the bell above the bakery door gave its familiar bright chime. He did not look up at first. At 6:30 on a Friday, it was usually Mrs. Coleman from the flower shop, or the Henderson twins begging for chocolate muffins before dinner, or a tired commuter looking for coffee strong enough to carry them through the last 20 miles home. Noah smiled out of habit, reached for a pink pastry box, and said, "Welcome in. I will be right with you." Then the room went quiet in a way that did not belong to small towns or bakeries. The soft chatter near the window faded. The old refrigerator hummed too loudly. Even the rain seemed to slow. Noah looked up, and the box slipped from his fingers. Dante Moretti stood just inside the doorway, rain shining on the shoulders of his black wool coat, his dark hair damp, his steel-gray eyes sweeping the bakery with the calm precision of a man who noticed exits before decorations. 5 years had not softened him. If anything, time had sharpened the lines of him into something more dangerous, more controlled, more impossible to forget. Noah's breath caught behind his ribs. For one dizzy second, the scent of warm vanilla, brown sugar, and fresh bread disappeared, replaced by the memory of expensive cologne, midnight rain, and the deep, steady presence of an alpha who had once looked at him as if the world had gone silent around them. Dante did not recognize him immediately. Noah had changed enough to become a stranger if someone wanted him to be one. His hair was longer, his face thinner, his old hotel uniform replaced by a flour-dusted apron and a soft blue sweater. He was no longer the trembling 20-year-old Omega who had walked away from a luxury hotel before dawn with nothing but a cracked heart and a bus ticket. He was a business owner now, a father, a man who woke before sunrise, packed school lunches, paid bills, fixed leaky faucets, and taught 2 little boys that love did not need to be loud to be real. Those 2 little boys were sitting at the corner table with crayons scattered between them, drawing dinosaurs and party hats while they waited for Noah to close the shop. Oliver, quiet and sharp-eyed, looked up first. Eli followed half a second later, frosting on his cheek and curiosity lighting his face. Dante's gaze moved past Noah and landed on the twins. The world narrowed. Oliver's crayon rolled off the table and tapped against the floor. He stared at Dante with the serious expression he used when solving puzzles far too big for 5 years old. Eli tilted his head, his curls bouncing, his small mouth parting in wonder. No one knew what they saw. He had seen it every morning for 5 years in 2 sleepy faces over cereal bowls. The same steel-gray eyes, the same proud tilt of the chin, the same quiet intensity that had once made Noah feel both seen and afraid. Oliver stood slowly, his little sneakers squeaking against the tile. "You have our eyes," he said. Dante went completely still. Eli slid down from his chair too, less cautious, more hopeful, and walked 2 steps closer before Noah could find his voice. "Are you our dad?" The bakery fell into a silence so deep Noah could hear his own heartbeat. Dante looked from Eli to Oliver, then finally to Noah. Recognition struck his face like lightning held behind glass. Not loud, not messy, worse than that. Controlled, stunned, and devastating. Noah gripped the edge of the counter until flour dust clung to his fingers. 5 years of hiding, 5 years of bedtime stories and unanswered questions, 5 years of telling himself that Havenbrook was far enough from the Moretti name, all collapsed under one innocent question from a child who had no idea he had just opened the locked door to Noah's past. Noah did not answer. He could not with Oliver and Eli staring up at Dante, as if the missing shape in every family drawing had just walked in from the rain. The bakery still held its breath around them, warm with cinnamon and sugar, bright with soft yellow lights, painfully ordinary for a moment that felt like the end of a world. Dante took one slow step forward, then stopped when Noah's shoulders tightened. That small pause nearly undid him. 5 years ago, Dante Moretti would have filled the room simply because he could. He would have taken control before anyone else understood there was a problem. Tonight, he stood still for 2 little boys and the Omega behind the counter who looked ready to disappear all over again. "Noah," Dante said, his voice low, careful, and roughened by disbelief. Eli's eyes widened. You know Daddy's name? Oliver turned toward Noah, sharper, quieter. Daddy. The word struck the room harder than any accusation. Noah swallowed, forcing himself to breathe through the old panic rising in his chest. Boys, he said gently, though his voice shook. Go wash your hands in the back, please. I need to talk to this customer. Eli frowned. But he is not a customer. Oliver did not move at all. He studied Dante with that unnervingly adult stillness that had frightened Noah the first time he saw it in his infant son's eyes. Dante looked at the boys, and something unreadable moved across his face. Not triumph, not anger, something closer to grief arriving too late. I can wait outside, he said. Noah almost laughed because the idea of Dante Moretti waiting anywhere for permission felt impossible, like a thunderstorm asking politely to enter a house. But he nodded once. Dante turned toward the door, and the bell chimed again as he stepped beneath the green awning outside. Rain blurred his outline through the glass, but his presence remained, dark and steady against the little bakery window. Noah locked the front door with fingers that would not stop shaking, then crouched in front of Oliver and Eli. Go to the apartment upstairs. Put your pajamas on. I will be there in a few minutes. Eli's lower lip pushed forward. Is he mad? No, Noah said quickly. Too quickly. Oliver washed his face. Are you scared? Noah's answer lodged in his throat. He brushed a curl from Oliver's forehead and kissed Eli's frosting sticky cheek. I am just surprised. The boys obeyed at last, climbing the narrow back stairs with many backward glances. Only when their footsteps faded did Noah let himself lean against the counter. The past rushed in before he could stop it. 5 years earlier, he had been 20 years old and working the late banquet shift at the Bellwether Hotel in Chicago, wearing a stiff white shirt, black vest, and shoes that pinched after 10 hours on his feet. The Moretti family had reserved the top floor for a private business dinner, the kind where security men stood by elevators and every guest spoke softly because power did not need to shout. Noah had only been there to refill water glasses and clear plates. Then Dante had looked at him across the room. Just once. Steel gray eyes, black suit, quiet command. It should have meant nothing. But to an Omega who had spent his whole life being overlooked, that one look felt like being seen beneath every layer of practiced invisibility. Later, Noah passed a half-open balcony door and heard Dante speaking to someone inside. An Omega is a weakness a man in my position cannot afford, Dante had said, calm and final. No attachments, no distractions, no exceptions. Noah never heard the rest. He walked away before his heart could ask for an explanation. By sunrise, he was on a bus heading east with $37 in his pocket and Dante's scent still clinging to his memory like rain on wool. 2 months later, in a small clinic outside Cleveland, he learned he was not leaving alone. The clinic smelled like antiseptic, old coffee, and rainwater carried in on strangers' coats. Noah remembered sitting on the edge of the exam table with his hands folded over his stomach, though there was nothing to show yet, nothing anyone could see, nothing that made the room feel different except the way the nurse's face softened when she returned with the results. You are pregnant, she had said gently. Then, after another careful look at the chart, and there are 2 heartbeats. For a moment, Noah forgot how to breathe. The world did not become bright or magical. It became enormous. Too enormous for a 20-year-old Omega with $37, a used backpack, and the name of a man he had promised himself never to say out loud again. He spent that night in a motel off the highway, listening to trucks pass in the dark, one hand resting over his stomach as if he could shield 2 tiny lives from every danger he had ever known. He thought of calling Dante. He even borrowed the motel office phone and dialed 6 numbers from memory before hanging up so fast his fingers hurt. An Omega is a weakness a man in my position cannot afford. The words returned with cruel clarity. Noah did not know the full shape of Dante's world, but he had seen enough at the Bellwether Hotel, guarded elevators, whispered names, men who stepped aside before Dante asked them to, fear-dressed in expensive suits. Children did not belong near that. His children would not grow up learning which windows were safe, which cars were followed, which smiles meant threat. So Noah kept moving until the city noise faded behind him and Havenbrook appeared like a secret someone had forgotten to protect. It was a small town tucked between maple woods and a slow brown river, 300 miles from Chicago, with brick storefronts, Friday night football, church bells on Sunday, and neighbors who brought casseroles before they asked questions. Noah found a room above an empty bakery owned by an elderly widow named Mrs. Whitaker, who needed help lifting flour sacks and keeping the books. She never asked why his hands shook when black cars passed too slowly outside. She only taught him how to proof dough, balance a register, and tell when cinnamon rolls were done by cent instead of timer. By the time Oliver and Eli were born, Havenbrook had become the first place Noah dared to call home. The twins arrived on a stormy April morning, small and furious and perfect, with matching cries that filled the hospital room like a promise. Oliver came first, quieting the moment Noah touched his cheek, his steel gray eyes opening too early and staring as if he already had questions. Eli followed 12 minutes later, louder, warmer, grabbing Noah's finger with surprising strength. Noah cried then, not because he was afraid, though he was, but because love had become real enough to hold. The years that followed were exhausting, tender, and full of ordinary miracles. Noah learned to frost cupcakes with one hand while rocking a stroller with his foot. He learned which cough meant a cold and which meant a dramatic protest against broccoli. He learned that Oliver liked lining up toy cars by color, while Eli believed every stuffed animal needed a bedtime song. He opened the honey oven after Mrs. Whitaker retired, repainting the sign himself during nap times and baking through nights when bills sat unopened on the counter. He told the boys stories about brave travelers and kind dragons, but never about their other parent. Not because he wanted to erase Dante, because he was terrified that saying his name would summon a world Noah had spent 5 years outrunning. Yet no distance could erase blood. It lived in Oliver's watchful silence, in Eli's protective little frown whenever Noah looked tired, in the steel gray eyes that followed him across the kitchen every morning. Noah had built a warm life with locked doors around the truth. Now, downstairs beneath the apartment, Dante Moretti stood in the rain outside the bakery window, and for the first time, Noah understood that secrets did not disappear just because they were loved. Noah unlocked the bakery door with the same key he had used every morning for 5 years, but this time his hand felt like it belonged to someone else. Dante stood beneath the green awning, rain darkening his coat, his broad shoulders outlined by the glow from the front window. He did not try to enter when the lock clicked. He waited until Noah stepped back, until Noah made space, until permission existed between them. That restraint hurt more than force would have, because it made it harder to keep seeing him as the man Noah had run from. Dante crossed the threshold slowly, bringing with him the cold scent of rain, expensive wool, and something deeper that Noah had never managed to forget. The bell chimed above them. It sounded too cheerful for the ruin of a secret. Noah closed the door and turned the sign to closed. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The bakery lights hummed softly. Upstairs, the faint thump of little feet crossed the apartment floor, followed by Eli's muffled laugh and Oliver's quieter answer. Dante looked toward the ceiling, and the expression that passed over his face was so raw that Noah had to look away. "They are mine," Dante said at last. It was not a question, not really. Noah folded his arms over his apron, more to hold himself together than to defend himself. "They are mine first." Dante's gaze returned to him. The old Dante might have answered with pride. This one only nodded once, as if Noah had corrected something important. "Yes," he said, "they are yours first." Noah had prepared for anger, accusations, demands. He had imagined Dante asking why with that quiet alpha authority that made other men confess things they had never meant to reveal. He had not prepared for agreement. It left him standing with all his fear and nowhere to put it. Dante's eyes moved over his face, searching the years there. The tiredness at the corners of Noah's eyes, the faint flour streak on his cheek, the guarded line of his mouth. "I did not know," Dante said. Noah's laugh came out small and humorless. "I know. I would have come. That is what scares me." The words escaped before Noah could soften them. Dante went still. Rain traced crooked silver lines down the dark window behind him. Noah pressed his palms against the counter and forced himself to continue. "You would have come with cars, guards, lawyers, family men, rules I did not understand, and a name powerful enough to swallow theirs before they ever learned to spell it. You would have told yourself you were protecting us." Dante's jaw tightened, not with anger at Noah, but with the impact of truth landing exactly where it belonged. And you believed I would take them. Noah looked toward the ceiling. I believed your world would. That was the sentence between them. Not betrayal. Not revenge. A world. Dante lowered his gaze. I came to Havenbrook because of Victor Hale. Noah's fingers curled against the counter. The name meant nothing to him, but the way Dante said it turned the bakery colder. Who was that? A man trying to move money through small businesses between here and Cleveland. We tracked one of his shell accounts to this county. I did not know you were here. Noah wanted to believe him. The worst part was that he did. Dante stepped closer, then stopped again when Noah's breathing changed. I spent 5 years thinking you left because you wanted no part of me. Noah stared at the pastry case, at the neat rows of lemon bars and cinnamon rolls, ordinary things arranged like proof that life could be simple if no one looked too closely. I heard you that night, he whispered. Dante's brows drew together. What night? At the hotel. You said an Omega was a weakness you could not afford. Dante closed his eyes, and the silence that followed was full of something that looked like regret before it became words. I was talking about my enemies using innocent people against me, not about you. Noah's chest tightened painfully. For 5 years, that sentence had been a locked door. Now Dante had opened it and revealed a different room behind it. But the years did not vanish just because the meaning changed. You still said it, Noah replied. Dante nodded. Yes, and you had every reason to run from a man whose life made those words sound true. Upstairs, Oliver called for Eli to stop stealing his blanket. The small, domestic complaint drifted down through the ceiling, absurd and precious. Dante looked up again, his face breaking quietly under the sound of children he had only discovered minutes ago. When he looked back at Noah, his voice was lower. What are their names? Noah hesitated. Then he answered, because hiding their names suddenly felt crueler than protecting them. Oliver and Eli. Dante repeated them silently, as if learning a prayer. Outside, a black sedan rolled slowly past the bakery, its headlights sliding across the window and over Dante's face. His expression changed at once, soft grief replaced by alert stillness. Noah noticed. What is it? Dante moved just enough to place himself between the window and the staircase. Nothing yet, he said, but his eyes remained on the street. Noah knew then, with a cold certainty that settled deep in his bones, that the past had not only found him. It had been followed. The black sedan did not stop in front of the honey oven. It rolled past slowly, turned at the corner, and disappeared behind the curtain of rain, but the warmth inside the bakery never returned. Noah stood behind the counter with his pulse beating in his throat, watching Dante watch the street. Nothing in Dante's posture had changed dramatically. He did not raise his voice, did not reach for a weapon, did not frighten the quiet town around them. Yet the bakery felt different with him alert, as if every window had become a question. Take the boys upstairs and keep them away from the front windows, Dante said. Noah's fear flared into anger because it was easier to hold. Do not give orders in my home. Dante looked at him immediately, and the command in his expression softened into apology. You are right. I am sorry. Please take Oliver and Eli upstairs while I make one phone call. That one word, please, unsettled Noah more than the sedan had. He searched Dante's face for control disguised as care, for the old world trying to step over the life he had built, but Dante only waited. Noah went upstairs on quiet feet and found the boys in their pajamas, sitting cross-legged on the rug between their small beds. Eli was holding a stuffed fox by one ear, while Oliver had his arms wrapped around his knees, staring at the floor with the serious look that always meant he was thinking too much. Is the man downstairs really our dad? Oliver asked before Noah could speak. The question was not loud, but it filled the little apartment. Noah sat on the edge of Eli's bed and drew both boys close. They smelled like laundry soap, frosting, and bedtime warmth. He is the man who helped bring you into the world, Noah said carefully. Eli blinked. So he is our dad. Noah closed his eyes for half a second. He had promised himself he would never lie to them. He had also promised himself he would keep them safe. Tonight those promises stood on opposite sides of the room. He might be, Noah said. But being a dad is something a person has to learn by showing up, not just by having the same eyes. Oliver looked toward the stairs. He looked sad. Noah swallowed. I know. Downstairs, Dante's voice was a low murmur through the floorboards, calm and precise. Not threatening. Not panicked. A man rearranging danger into manageable pieces. Noah hated that part of him for being useful. He hated himself more for feeling relieved. After settling the twins with a movie and strict instructions to stay upstairs, Noah returned to the bakery. Dante had removed his wet coat and stood near the counter in a black dress shirt, phone in hand, his attention still angled toward the street. "That car belongs to a rental company in Akron," he said. "Paid for through a business connected to Victor Hale." Noah wrapped his arms around himself. "Why would your enemy care about my bakery?" Dante's eyes met his. He did not soften the answer. "Because I looked at you too long." The words landed quietly, but Noah felt the floor shift beneath them. Dante continued, "Men like Victor survive by noticing what matters to other people. I came here for his accounts. He may have noticed I found something I did not expect." Noah looked around the bakery. The chalkboard menu Oliver had decorated with crooked stars, the tip jar Eli called the treasure cup, the row of honey jars from a farm 3 miles out of town. This was not a battlefield. This was breakfast sandwiches, school fundraisers, birthday cakes, and Mrs. Coleman's standing order of blueberry scones every Tuesday. "I told myself this would happen if I called you," Noah whispered. "I told myself your world would follow." Dante's expression tightened with pain, but he did not argue. "Then I will make sure my world leaves." It sounded impossible. Mafia names did not simply leave. They lingered in rumors, bank accounts, favors, and fear. Noah shook his head. "You cannot promise that." "No," Dante said. "I cannot promise a clean past. I can promise that I will not solve this by taking your life away from you." Noah looked at him then, really looked. "What does that mean?" Dante placed his phone face down on the counter like he was setting aside a weapon he did not want between them. "It means I will not move you into one of my houses unless you ask. I will not surround this place with men who scare your customers. I will not tell the boys who I am before you decide what they should know. And I will not use danger as an excuse to claim a family I have not earned." Noah's throat tightened. For 5 years, he had imagined Dante as the storm outside the door. He had never imagined the storm learning to knock. A soft creak came from the staircase. Both men turned. Oliver stood halfway down, Eli peeking from behind him with the stuffed fox pressed to his chest. Oliver looked directly at Dante. "If bad people are coming, are you going to leave again?" Dante went very still. Then he crouched slowly, bringing himself closer to the twins' height without stepping toward them. "No," he said, voice rough but steady. "This time, I am going to stay where your dad lets me stand." Noah felt the words move through him, painful and warm at once. Eli looked at Noah. Can he stand in the bakery? Noah should have said no. He should have asked for time, distance, a plan. Instead, he looked at the rain-streaked window, the dark street, the 2 boys on the stairs, and the Alpha who had finally learned that protection began with permission. "For tonight," Noah said softly. "He can stand by the door." By midnight, the bakery no longer felt like a place built for sugar and soft mornings. The front lights were dimmed, the display case was covered, and the small tables had been pushed slightly away from the windows. Noah moved through the familiar space on instinct, wiping a counter that was already clean, checking the lock twice, then a 3rd time, because fear needed something for his hands to do. Dante stood near the door exactly where Noah had allowed him to stand, not 1 step farther, his sleeves rolled to his forearms, his phone silent in his palm. He looked too powerful for the little bakery, too dark against the pastel walls and honey-colored shelves, but he also looked strangely careful, as if he understood that one wrong movement could make this place feel less like Noah's home. Upstairs, Oliver and Eli had finally fallen asleep after asking 12 questions, accepting only 3 answers, and making Dante promise from the bottom of the stairs that monsters were not allowed in bakeries. Noah had nearly broken at that. Not because it was funny, though it was, but because Dante had answered with complete seriousness. "Not while I am here." Now the quiet between them stretched thin. Noah set 2 mugs on the counter and poured coffee from the pot he had forgotten to turn off. He pushed one toward Dante without looking at him. "You said Victor Hale was using small businesses," Noah said. "Does that mean he already knows about me?" Dante accepted the mug but did not drink. "He knows the bakery exists. He knows I came here. He may suspect you matter. That is enough." "Yes," Dante said. "It is." The honesty was brutal, but Noah preferred it to comfort shaped like a lie. He leaned against the opposite counter, arms folded, the blue sweater he wore beneath his apron suddenly too thin against the cold moving under his skin. So what happens now? Dante looked toward the rain-dark street. I have people tracing Victor's accounts. Quietly. Legally. If he is moving money through Havenbrook, there will be records, shell companies, tax filings, property transfers. Men like him think fear hides everything, but paper remembers. Noah blinked. He had expected guards, threats, commands spoken into the night. Not paperwork. Not tax filings. Dante noticed his expression and gave the faintest shadow of a smile, gone almost before it appeared. You look disappointed. Confused, Noah corrected. I thought your solution would be more dramatic. I have spent years being dramatic. His eyes returned to Noah. It cost more than it saved. That answer settled between them with surprising weight. Noah looked down at his coffee, watching steam curl into the air like something trying to become visible. 5 years ago, I thought leaving was the only brave thing I had ever done. Dante's grip tightened around his mug. It was brave. Noah's throat ached. It was also lonely. The words came out before he could stop them. Once spoken, they filled the bakery more completely than the scent of cinnamon ever had. Dante did not rush to comfort him. He let the truth stand. I am sorry, he said, for the sentence you heard, for the world that made it believable, for every night you had to be scared alone. Noah closed his eyes, and for the first time, the apology did not feel like a hook. It did not demand forgiveness. It simply existed. A creak sounded above them, followed by a small voice calling, Daddy? Noah straightened, but Oliver appeared at the top of the stairs, hair messy, blanket wrapped around his shoulders. His eyes moved from Noah to Dante. Both of you, he clarified, as if annoyed by the confusion. Eli shuffled into view behind him, half asleep and holding the stuffed fox. I had a bad dream, Eli whispered. Noah started toward them, but Dante stepped aside from the door rather than forward, leaving the path open. Noah gathered both boys at the bottom of the stairs, kneeling to hold them close. Oliver looked over Noah's shoulder at Dante. Are you still standing there? Dante's voice softened. Yes. Good, Oliver said, then yawned. The door looked too big. Something in Dante's face shifted, quiet and permanent. Noah saw it happen. Not acclaim, not victory, not the satisfaction of blood recognized, but the first real understanding of fatherhood as a duty measured in inches, doorways, and sleepy trust. Eli rubbed his eyes. Can he have a cinnamon roll if he is guarding? Noah almost smiled. Maybe in the morning. Dante looked at the boys, then at Noah. Only if your dad says yes. Their dad. Not my Omega. Not my sons. Not my family. Noah felt the difference so sharply it nearly stole his breath. Outside, another car passed without slowing. This time Dante watched it, but Noah did not feel the same cold panic. The danger was still there. The past was still waiting beyond the glass. But inside the bakery, with flour on the counter, coffee cooling between them, and 2 sleepy children leaning against his chest, Noah understood something he had not allowed himself to imagine. Dante Moretti had found them, but he had not taken them. He was learning how to stay. By morning, Havenbrook looked almost innocent again. Rain clung to the bakery windows in silver beads. The sidewalk smelled like wet leaves and coffee, and Mrs. Coleman still arrived at 7:15 for her blueberry scones, as if the world had not shifted beneath Noah's feet overnight. Dante stood in the kitchen instead of by the front door, because Noah had allowed him one more room, and that small permission seemed to matter to him more than any territory he had ever controlled. He wore a borrowed apron over his black shirt, too tall and too serious for the faded yellow fabric with tiny bees printed on it. Eli thought this was hilarious. Oliver pretended not to, but Noah saw the corner of his mouth twitch while he lined up napkins on the counter. For 3 hours, the bakery moved through its normal rhythm with one impossible addition. Dante handed paper bags to customers. Dante learned that muffins went on the left shelf and croissants on the right. Dante listened when Eli explained that the Honey Bear squeeze bottle had a bad attitude and needed encouragement. He did not laugh at the child. He nodded solemnly and encouraged the Honey Bear. Noah should not have found that charming. He absolutely found it charming, and that made him nervous. At 10:30, a white envelope slid under the front door. Oliver saw it first. Daddy mail. Noah's body went cold at the same time Dante's expression emptied. Dante crossed the room, but he stopped before picking it up and looked back at Noah. May I? Noah nodded once. Dante lifted the envelope by the corner and opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper with no signature, only a printed message in clean black letters. Leave Havenbrook before Sunday, or the whole town learns who protected you. Noah read it twice before the words made sense. His first thought was not fear for himself. It was the school office with its cheerful bulletin board, Mrs. Whitaker's old bakery sign in storage, the apartment upstairs with dinosaur pajamas on the floor. His small, fragile life suddenly looked breakable from every angle. Dante folded the paper once. His calm was frightening because Noah could see how much effort it took. Victor, Noah said. Yes. He thinks embarrassing me will make you leave. Dante looked toward the front window where customers moved past under umbrellas, unaware of the storm beneath the quiet. He thinks fear is the fastest way to move people. Noah laughed softly, but it had no humor in it. He is not wrong. Dante turned to him. He is wrong about you. The words hit harder than comfort. Noah wanted to believe them, but the envelope lay between them like proof that love, safety, and fresh bread could still be reached by dirty hands. Oliver stepped closer and picked up the folded paper before Noah could stop him. His young face tightened as he read the first line. Noah gently took it back. This is grown-up business. Oliver's steel-gray eyes lifted to Dante. Are we moving? Eli appeared behind him, suddenly quiet. Noah crouched, gathering both boys close. He wished he could promise them everything would stay the same. He wished childhood could be protected by wishing alone. Dante crouched a few feet away, not crowding them, his voice steady. No one is deciding that today except your dad. Eli looked at Noah. But what if the bad man is mean to the town? Noah had no answer. That was what Victor had understood. Noah could be brave for himself. He could even be brave against the idea of Dante. But Havenbrook was not just a hiding place anymore. It was Mrs. Coleman slipping extra quarters into the tip jar for the boys' college fund. It was Coach Ramirez giving Oliver old baseball cards. It was the librarian keeping dinosaur books aside for Eli. It was home, and Victor was threatening it because Dante had looked at Noah too long. Later that afternoon, after the twins were upstairs with Mrs. Coleman watching cartoons, Dante spread documents across the bakery table. Business records, property filings, bank transfers, names Noah did not recognize, but Dante clearly did. Victor has been using 3 empty storefronts outside town, Dante said. If I send this to federal investigators through the right attorney, his operation here collapses without anyone in Havenbrook knowing your name. Noah stared at him. And what happens to you? Dante's silence answered before his mouth did. It will expose parts of my family's structure. Your power. Some of it. Noah studied him across the table. This man who had once said weakness was unaffordable and now sat in a small-town bakery, offering to spend power like currency for children who barely knew him. Why would you do that? Dante looked toward the staircase, where Eli's laughter floated faintly through the ceiling. Because if keeping power means my sons live afraid of it, then I have already lost what matters. Noah's chest ached. The truth was there, sudden and terrifying. Dante was not asking Noah to step back into the shadows. He was opening his own doors and letting the light in, even though it might burn down the life he had built from darkness. Noah reached for the nearest document, his fingers brushing the edge of Dante's hand for the briefest second. Neither of them moved closer. Neither pulled away too quickly. Then we do this legally, Noah said. No threats. No drama. No turning my bakery into a fortress. Dante's eyes softened. Your rules. For the first time since the black sedan passed the window, Noah felt something steadier than fear rise inside him. Victor Hale had found the bakery because Dante had looked at Noah too long. But he had misunderstood what he saw. Noah was not Dante's weakness. The twins were not leverage. This little honey-colored shop was not a soft place waiting to be broken. It was the reason Dante Moretti was finally choosing to become a different kind of strong. The legal file left Havenbrook at 8 the next morning inside a plain brown envelope, carried not by one of Dante's men, but by Mrs. Coleman's nephew, a junior attorney in Cleveland who drove a dented blue pickup and stopped for gas station coffee twice before reaching the federal building. Noah liked that detail more than he expected. It felt ordinary. It felt clean. No black cars. No quiet threats. No men in dark suits standing where children could see them. Just documents, signatures, timestamps, and the kind of truth that did not need to raise its voice. By noon, Dante's phone began to vibrate across the bakery table every few minutes. He did not answer most of the calls. When he did, his words were brief and calm. Comply. Send the records. No one approaches Havenbrook. Each sentence sounded like another door closing on the old life that had followed him into Noah's. Noah washed while pretending not to, rolling pie dough with more force than necessary. You are giving up a lot, he said at last. Dante looked up from the stack of papers. I am returning what should never have belonged to me. Noah's hand stilled. Power. Fear. The answer settled into the flour-dusted quiet between them. Upstairs, Eli was loudly teaching his stuffed fox how to count to 20, while Oliver corrected him with the patience of a tiny school principal. Dante listened for a moment, and the corner of his mouth softened. Noah had seen him face danger with less uncertainty than he showed while listening to his own children argue over numbers. That was what finally made Noah believe change might be real. Not the documents. Not the promises. The fear in Dante's eyes that he might get fatherhood wrong, and the determination to keep trying anyway. By late afternoon, the first news alert appeared on Mason Reed's old laptop behind the counter, the one Noah used for inventory. Federal investigators had opened an inquiry into several shell companies connected to Victor Hale. 3 empty storefronts outside Havenbrook were listed in the report. No bakery was named. No children were mentioned. No Omega's private life was exposed for public curiosity. Noah read the article twice, then sat down because his knees had forgotten how to hold him. Dante stood on the other side of the table, silent, waiting. Is it over? Noah asked. The Havenbrook part is, Dante said. Victor will be too busy protecting himself to come near you. And if he tries, he will find lawyers, auditors, and federal agents before he finds your door. It should have sounded anticlimactic. After 5 years of imagining Dante's world as something loud and unstoppable, Noah had expected the ending to arrive like thunder. Instead, it arrived as paperwork filed on time, as a phone call not answered, as a dangerous man choosing restraint so thoroughly that even his enemies had to fight him in daylight. That evening, Noah closed the honey oven early, not because he was afraid, but because Oliver and Eli had demanded a family meeting, and apparently family meetings required chocolate chip pancakes for dinner. Dante stood awkwardly near the stove, holding a mixing bowl like it might explode. Eli sat on the counter swinging his feet, while Oliver read the recipe card with great seriousness. You have to stir gently, Oliver instructed. If you stir too hard, Daddy says the pancakes get tough. Dante looked at Noah for confirmation. Noah tried not to smile. He is right. I am always right, Oliver said. Eli gasped. No, you are not. Yesterday you said ducks have eyebrows. They look like they should, Oliver replied. Dante made a sound then, low and surprised, almost a laugh. It changed his whole face. The twins noticed. Noah noticed more. The room felt warmer for it. Later, after the boys fell asleep on the couch under one blanket, sticky with syrup and happiness, Noah stood beside Dante in the dim bakery kitchen. The street outside was quiet. No black sedan. No warning envelope. Just rain beginning again, soft against the glass. I am still scared, Noah admitted. Dante nodded. I know. I do not forgive everything yet. I know that too. Noah looked at him then. But you can come back tomorrow morning. The boys will ask where you are if you do not. Dante's eyes closed for one brief second, as if the words had given him something too fragile to hold carelessly. I will be here. Noah believed him. Not completely. Not blindly. But enough for tomorrow. And after 5 years of surviving one day at a time, tomorrow felt like the first honest promise they had ever made. 6 months later, the honey oven opened before sunrise because Oliver and Eli had decided birthdays were too important to wait for regular business hours. The bakery glowed warm against the blue morning, its windows fogged with heat, its shelves crowded with cinnamon rolls, blueberry scones, honey cakes, and a slightly uneven chocolate layer cake that Dante had insisted on helping frost. It leaned a little to the left. Eli called it artistic. Oliver called it structurally concerning. Noah called it perfect because Dante had stood in the kitchen at 5 in the morning with flour on his black sweater, listening to 2 6-year-olds argue over sprinkles as if there were nowhere else in the world he would rather be. He had kept his promise. Not dramatically, not loudly. He had simply returned the next morning, and the morning after that, and hundreds of mornings after that. He learned the school drop-off line, The names of the teachers, which diner had the best pancakes, which customer liked extra icing, and why Eli needed the green cup while Oliver preferred the blue one. He never moved into the apartment without being asked. He never brought guards into the bakery. He handled the remaining pieces of his old world through lawyers, accountants, and long calls taken outside under the awning, where Noah could see him choosing calm even when calm cost him. Victor Hale's network had collapsed piece by piece under federal review, and Havenbrook stayed Havenbrook, small, nosy, kind, and wonderfully ordinary. Noah still had hard days. Some mornings he woke with the old fear sitting heavy in his chest. Some evenings he looked at Dante across the kitchen and remembered the sentence that had sent him running. But healing did not erase the past. It gave the past a smaller room to live in. Dante understood that. He never demanded forgiveness like payment for good behavior. He built trust the slow way, through packed lunches, repaired shelves, bedtime stories, parent-teacher conferences, and standing quietly beside Noah when the memories came back too sharply. On the twins' birthday, the bakery filled with neighbors, paper streamers, and the chaotic joy of children eating too much frosting before breakfast. Mrs. Coleman brought balloons. Coach Ramirez brought baseball cards. The librarian brought 2 dinosaur books wrapped in green ribbon. Dante stayed near the back table, watching Oliver explain the cake problem to anyone who would listen while Eli proudly announced that his dad had made the crooked part. Noah froze when he heard it. His dad. Not the man from the rain. Not Dante. Dad. Dante heard it too. His hand went still around the coffee cup, and for a second, all the power, wealth, and history attached to the Moretti name disappeared from his face. He looked only like a man being given something he was terrified to deserve. Oliver glanced up from the cake, saw Dante staring, and sighed as if adults were very slow. "You are Dad too," he said. "Daddy is Noah. You are Dad. That is not confusing." Eli nodded with frosting on his nose. "Unless you forget the green cup again." The room laughed softly, but Dante did not. His eyes shone as he crouched in front of the boys. "I will try not to forget." Oliver studied him with grave approval. Eli threw his arms around Dante's neck, and after half a heartbeat, Oliver joined too. Dante closed his eyes, holding them carefully, as if the whole future had stepped into his arms wearing birthday crowns. Noah looked away for a moment, not to hide sadness, but to make room for happiness so large it hurt. Later, after the party ended and the last crumb was swept from the floor, Noah found Dante by the front window, turning the closed sign over for the night. Outside, Havenbrook's streetlights flickered on, soft and golden in the spring dusk. Dante looked back at him. "Do you ever regret not telling me sooner?" Noah thought about the motel room, the clinic, the first night the twins came home, the years of fear, the years of laughter, and the long road that had brought Dante here with flower on his sleeves and birthday frosting on his cuff. "I regret that I was alone," he said honestly, "but I do not regret choosing them." Dante nodded. "I will spend the rest of my life honoring that choice." Noah walked to him slowly and took his hand. It was not a grand reunion. It was not an ending tied in perfect ribbon. It was better. It was a door unlocked, a bakery warm with tomorrow's bread, 2 children asleep upstairs, and an Alpha who had finally learned that love was not something he could protect by owning it. Love stayed because it was safe to stay. And when Noah leaned into Dante's shoulder, watching their reflection in the rain-clean glass, he understood that 5 years ago he had walked away to save his family. Now, at last, his family had found its way home.